You know, it's an interesting day when the Icy Dragon of Imprisonment is on the topic list. Make sure you guys smash the living crap out of that subscribe button so you guys don't miss out more on this content. So it appears that our dear old friend Trishula, the Dragon of Icy Imprisonment, is back on the discussion list fairly recently because of actually Branded. That's what I saw. Now, this is 3 monsters with different names and must be fusion summoned, or must be either fusion summoned using only monsters from the hand or field, or special summon from the extra deck by banishing the above cards that you control. So there are technically 2 ways to get this out. But you're only going to be able to make it with monsters from your hand or field, or by banishing the above that you control. So keep that in mind. You know, you're not going to be able to super poly this. But on special summon, using only monsters that were originally dragons, you can reveal and banish 3 cards. 1 from your deck, 1 from the top of your opponent's deck, and 1 from their extra deck. Now, you can only use this effect of Trishula, the Ice Dragon of Imprisonment, once per turn. But I think it's actually really hilarious, actually, that if you were to use this with all dragons, which, by the way, Albaz can do all day long, because literally the deck's job is to go, ooh, dragons! And I mean, you've got all these extra little bells and whistles that the deck tends to have access to that I think is really, really funny. So, yes, Albaz has been evolving at, I think, one of the most interesting rates in the OCG as just kind of this little menace that players just really are not prepared for. You know, the Branded in white really changed up a lot of the way that the deck fundamentally worked. I know a lot of people were like, well, you know, did we really need to have this happen? Yes. The Albaz support revitalized the deck, and Konami realized, oh, hey, people like this deck. It's one of the most popular lures that we've ever had, and just by sprinkling in some extra stuff, like the Trishula here, for example, the deck's kicking back off. Let's talk about Tri-Brigade here. So one interesting thing that we have been kind of following has been, you know, Fire King's evolution with the Tri-Brigade stuff. Now, Frogdoll is a heck of a card, I mean, in Lunalight, but also a couple of Fire King players are kind of looking at it a little bit, you know, underneath the lens of, what if we were to build this into something like Fire King? You know, how much does this kind of change up the game plan fundamentally for the way that, you know, the deck is working? The fact that you have Wing Beast, Beast, and Beast Warriors all underneath the lens of Fire King is honestly like the big thing. All right, you've got to take into consideration here that when you start to actually have these monsters, and I mean, banishing some of the Fire King stuff isn't going to be one of the best moves that you want to do, because considering, you know, a lot of this stuff's going to be kind of floating around, but if a piece does get cut off somewhere along the way, it's going to start to stack up, which is where the Tri-Brigade stuff would naturally come in and actually try to patch up some of those problems that you're kind of, or you would be experiencing. So there is something about the Tri-Brigade stuff actually being a good, consistent upgrade / bridge to kind of help you out with on that. And also, I mean, we did get the new Tri-Brigade stuff, you know, having a link to that further dumps in and upgrades that consistency, I think is going to feel absolutely good for you. If you are actually having, you know, a tough time deciding if you want to pick up Tri-Brigade stuff outside of the helm of like Fire Kings, it's all pretty cheap, and it's a pretty fun little package that you can kind of slap together. The Medius the Pure situation. So, Elven notes are going to be coming, and I have seen so many cool Elven notes ideas, like Centurion Elven notes. Oh, that's cool. You know, Fiendsmith and TCG really can't do it unless, you know, we bridge into the Armades. You know, we're going to have to go into Armades to access full Fiendsmith combo, but that's okay. You know, we just don't have the mini Underworld God, so that build's not going to be fine. What about, you know, what if we want to play the really crazy ideas of Diabell Star and Friends? Okay, yeah, we can technically do that. I mean, it just comes down to, you know, synchro good stuff, peering into synchro good stuff, and you're able to go. Now, I bring up Medius the Pure specifically because Medius is the guy that's driving all of these themes. You know, he's the modern Diabellstar, and he's been gaining a little bit of traction in all of his rarities. It's not exactly the most chaotically crazy thing to be seeing, you know, a headliner going up across the board. But, you know, if you are deciding, you know, hey, I want to build Elven notes, you really are going to have to decide, do you want to pick up your Medius the Pures now, or do you want to wait for them to kind of come out? And that's going to be your coin flip that you're going to have to debate on here as time initially kind of goes on here. I love the concept of Elven notes. It's probably one of the first synchro decks that I have looked at in years and genuinely said, wow, this actually looks a lot of fun. I actually kind of want to try this, and it's kind of where I am right now. But it does beg the question of, you know, is Medius the Pure going to continue to rise? You know, what more are we going to have within the theme space for this that we're going to have to kind of pick up? And I mean, that's where your conditions are set right now. It just comes down to, you know, the wants that the community is going to want to have. For Hire has actually performed. So For Hire has done a couple of cute little things. The deck very much started off with the idea of we can play K9 cards in here. You know, we have a level 5, you know, there's also an extender for this deck, but we can also kind of step away from this. And then I saw some pure builds coming in and out. And then I saw probably one of the most interesting concepts. And it was, what if we take Elven notes and combine it with For Hire? Suddenly, what ends up happening within this space, you know, does this deck evolve into something a little bit more crazy? And the answer is it can. You also got to be reminded that For Hire has some of the craziest custom cards that you can have. I mean, Fogo is a really good card. Their Link 3 is crazy good for, you know, the advantage it makes. They had to remake their field spell in order to give them a fighting chance. But I mean, the toolbox options that For Hire has is some of the best around. It just took Konami, obviously, we have to go patch up some of the problems that the former package had. And I think they've done a great job at just doing that. So I do think that For Hire is a deck that you might want to just kind of keep on the back burner. Obviously, you know, we had that very high initial spike with this stuff, but things have long since kind of calmed back down to what I would say is a little bit more of a calming point with the For Hire stuff. So if you also are looking for a deck that you can just kind of splash a bunch of stuff into and actually have it work out, yeah, give it a shot, man. Have yourself a time and see what you can do. And then this brings me to the Fallen and the Virtuous. This card, I'm going to be very bold here. I would not be surprised to see the Fallen and the Virtuous getting checked at a much later point in the card's life. The fact that it is spot removal, that dumps something from the extra deck, that pulls you into another copy of itself, which then you can reuse again. As long as you're able to see one of these, dare I say it ends up turning into 3 potential copies of spot removal options against your opponent. And that's fucking crazy, man. Also, like, if you're playing this in Sky Striker, it ends up being another quick play spell you just get to add to your hand that you can just use off of your Radiant Typhoon cards to draw cards. Like, oh no, I'm losing maybe 1 to 2 slots in my extra deck to kind of do this little chain of events to, you know, get to this stuff. But that's a lot, and that's pretty crazy to think about. Konami, I mean, yes, it is a good card, and it was something that needed to be made. But the more that we look at this and the more that we think about, you know, what's been going on in the design space for this, it just ends up one of the best branded cards. Ends up just being one of these best generic cards that a lot of decks just have free access to. And that is a little bit problematic. I'm not saying that it's the end of the world. I'm just saying that, wow, you know, there's a lot to kind of take away with that. So what do you guys think about all of this? Please leave a comment down below. Tell me what you guys think, and I'll see your beautiful faces back here later today, guys. Patrons, thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.